I see some very festive smiles, but not enough. I want to welcome the new people. People who are coming after last week, they were here for the first time. And thank you. Thank you very much for coming, those people who are new. Now, it's easy for you to spot them. All you have to do is turn around. We don't really like to raise the hand, even though I do that on occasion. If you see a new person, say hello. How are you? I'm not necessarily new, but I certainly am glad to see you. And that is certainly true. Let us keep Desmond Daly in our thoughts, as well as Beth Browning in our thoughts. Both are on the mend and now receiving medical treatment. There was a man who was lonely, and he thought, I would like to have a companion. So he went to the pet store and he tried to get a parrot. He found one. And the parrot, the manager of the pet store said, well, the previous owner taught the parrot to say a lot of curse words, so get ready. Oh, I can handle that, he says. Well, he got him home, and sure enough, curse words abound. Here a curse, there a curse, everywhere. It just didn't stop. He said, if you don't stop that, I'm going to put you in the freezer just to cool you off. So he put him in the freezer. Didn't stop. Took him right out. Now, are you going to do that anymore? Oh, no. Did you learn your lesson? Oh, absolutely, but I have one question. What did the turkey do? See, I have to give you that now because I'm not going to be preaching until the 26th of November. I'll be here, but I can't really let that one go without, having it as a Thanksgiving theme, you see. Well, now most people describe themselves as practical. They think about what they possibly can do in life, and they hold out hope of what could be possible if they were to dream new dreams. My question to you this morning is, would you consider yourself a practical person or a visionary person? Robert Kennedy said, some people see things as they are and say, why? I dream things that never were and say, why not? I've heard it said so many times by others that you do have to come to a point in your life with some things. Sometimes you have to fish or cut bait. Maybe that's happened to you. That means you have to know when it's time to cut your losses and give up, rather than continuing a long path that pretty much you're pretty sure is not going to end the way you would hope it might. That's a hard decision to make because you've already invested yourself into something, and now you have to make that decision as to whether you will continue to invest your time and your energy or your money, and whether you will do something else. Maybe that's your marriage. Maybe it's your job. Maybe it's your health and how you're treating yourself. I personally come to the conclusion that your decision to continue to do what you were doing or to even give it up is a decision that, at best, is very hard. Wherever you may be in your personal decision-making, either decision is difficult. And when you arrive at it, it's a difficult arrival. I don't think anybody likes to admit it. Defeat. And if you look at giving up in that capacity, that defeat hurts. Hurts a lot. Even more, I have titled this sermon, Never Give Up. Well, Mahatma Gandhi was the pioneer ancestor of nonviolent civil disobedience. He was a lawyer in South Africa. and he had a philosophical plan on how people of India could expel the people of Great Britain from their country. At first, the people were devoted followers of Gandhi, but they were skeptical. He had a new approach to cause tension and bring about change by not going to war of these foreign invaders of the country. Gandhi knew that the people of India were no match for them. They had much more military arms. They had more soldiers, Great Britain. They were the occupiers of their country. So he had to come up with a plan that was going to be effective and one that people of India could follow. Until that time, in 1947, the government represented the monarchy of Great Britain. And they were far from civil. They were far from being reasonable. And basically, they were just downright oppressive against the people who felt they could decide their own fate. And Great Britain should leave the plan that was never before one that anybody knew about. Needless to say, there was profound skepticism. Gandhi would address his followers and state that there would be no retribution when the soldiers would use physical force and military strength to keep India under the rule. To be honest, when his followers heard this, they thought that he had lost his mind. Until Gandhi explained to him that the tension that he wished to create in the country would be one whereby Great Britain had no ability to handle. It was worth a shot. And for all intents and purposes, over time, it was very, very successful. People were beaten. They were hauled off hundreds and then thousands into jails that were too small for doing nothing other than resisting the oppressive orders of their captors. The people of India began to see what Gandhi was talking about. And finally, after continued nonviolence, civil disobedience, the military generals of His Majesty's kingdom met with Mahatma Gandhi to work out a withdrawal that everybody might live with. Such a withdrawal that everybody might be able to manage. It wasn't easy to arrive at. There were so many considerations to discuss. India had Hindus and Muslims and Christians and other religious people and concerns, regional concerns. It didn't seem that progress was being achieved in these talks. And out of sheer frustration, one of the generals looked at Mahatma Gandhi, a man who had no public office and was never elected to any position. He blurted out after many hours of discussion and debate, getting nowhere with negotiations. He said, "What do you want us to do? Just walk out?" To which Gandhi looked right back at him and said, "Yes." Now, I mentioned that story about the great struggle of the millions of people of India and their visionary and nonviolent leader, Mahatma Gandhi, because what was essential to achieve success once they started this nonviolent civil disobedience, they had to see it through to the end, or it wouldn't work. In short, he was admonishing them never to give up. This picture here is the only, by accident. This is a picture of Martin Luther King Jr. with his mentor. It's the only one. He never met Mahatma Gandhi, but deep up in here is a picture in the office of Martin Luther King. This picture was just accidentally taken by his secretary. And it's the only one with him and his mentor in the same picture. And I say that because Martin Luther King always said that Gandhi was the example that he was striving for in the United States with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. And their attempts to overthrow these laws that were characterized as Jim Crow. Now, the amazing thing about Dr. King was that he never gave up. He recognized many laws that people of color had to endure for decades, if not centuries old. And if there was to be real change in society, then the people who were oppressing people of color had to be considered also. The whole society was infected with this disease of hatred, of hostility, and of painful discrimination. That's not to say that there weren't moments when Dr. King felt he was way over his head. Remember, he was a pretty young man. Not only that, but he had a family. By common sense, he was violently resisted by people who wanted to keep people of color, and in general people who are not white, in that same inferior status that was carved out for them. His home was bombed. Lucky, nobody was hurt. He personally was stabbed by a deranged woman with a letter opener as he was at a book signing in New York. People who supported the movement were jailed mercilessly and treated oppressively. And some of them you never found after a while. Some people were taken away. And there he was, under his covers, reading The Courage to Be by Paul Tillich, under his blanket, wondering what would come next. Oh, he had his doubts. But just when he was about to give up, something would cause him to reinforce the desire never to give up. Sometimes Harry Belafonte would call and tell him that financing came in. Something would happen in the courts that would affirm what the movement was all about in terms of bringing about change, an injunction, or some kind of permit. I find that people convince themselves of pretty much anything if they think about things long enough. And they actually give up because it's too hard to keep going. You can convince yourself of anything. Now, I can't imagine that Matiba, Nelson Mandela, was offered his freedom from Robbins Island after 15 years of solitary confinement in a place where he had his eyesight injured because the glare of the rocks that he had to break every day were causing him to lose his sight. Well, he was offered freedom with one condition, that he renounce all violence from the African National Congress. He refused, and he stayed in prison for another 12 years. After a while, they moved him to a better place, but most of it was on Robbins Island. 27 years. And on February 11th, 1990, Nelson Mandela outlasted his captors, and he walked out of prison unconditionally. He never gave up. Now, let me ask you, if you were faced with a calamity that you're dealing with, an unfortunate matter for a long, do you think you would be able to keep going? Of course, we say, well, I hope so. I mean, things are bad, but maybe things will get better. Would you resolve it's not just possible to keep going? The only alternative for you is to give up. And they try to do that to you if you've ever been in boot camp, which I never have. But my son has. I actually thought that, and I feel terrible that I thought this. I thought he was not going to make it through Paris Island, the Marine boot camp, until the chaplain there told me, he's doing fine. This is your problem that you think he's not going to make it, not his problem. He did. He told me that. And boy, it was the best advice I ever got because I thought that I'd never see him again. That's how I thought about military. But he made it quite well. Many of you know I'm a student of history, and I live and breathe and think history most of my time. And one period of history that comes to mind is the Second World War. After reading about it, I thought how courageous and brave and honorable it was that people who fought those Nazis did not give in to Germany's onslaught march across Europe. I think it's safe to say that people believed that Hitler was a madman. He was a dictator determined to fulfill a 1,000-year Reich. Well, he didn't get 1,000 years. I think he got 12. Most of the small countries of Europe that Hitler invaded were afraid of him. He amassed tremendous military and other power that the mere thought of opposing him seemed like suicide. People honestly didn't know what to do. And one country with an unconventional prime minister came to the people and gave people hope to never give up. His name was Winston Churchill, a cigar-smoking, whiskey drinker by default. The King of England asked him to become prime minister. Nobody wanted the job. And Neville Chamberlain was his predecessor, and all of the delegates were pretty much on his side. He had some kind of cancer, so he was going to quietly resign and let somebody else replace him. Plus, the onslaught of what was coming, he knew, was going to be devastating. He wanted to appease Adolf Hitler and hoped that the treaty that they signed would be honored by Adolf Hitler. Well, Winston Churchill had no such illusion that Adolf Hitler would agree to anything, ever. He knew that the decisive action must be taken, or Great Britain would be another country that would fall to Germany. Most of the people in the House of Lords and the House of Commons totally disagreed with Winston Churchill. They all thought, as France advised, that they must do whatever they had to do because they had no way to oppose Adolf Hitler. Ambassador to the Court of St. James from the United States in Great Britain, representing the Roosevelt administration, Joseph P. Kennedy, also advised appeasement. Charles Lindbergh, an American hero for flying across the Atlantic on the Spirit of St. Louis, also advised appeasement. Only Winston Churchill stood up and said that the people of Great Britain would never give up, even though Great Britain was far outnumbered in soldiers and military armaments and in strategic maneuvering. Churchill said, "We will never give up. I have myself full confidence that if all they do their duty, if nothing is neglected, and if the best arrangements are made, as they are being made, we shall prove ourselves once again able to defend our island home, to ride out the storm of war, and to outlive the menace of tyranny, if necessary for years, if necessary alone. At any rate, that is what we're going to try to do. That is the result of His Majesty's government and every man of them. That is the will of Parliament and the nation. The British Empire and the French Republic, linked together in their cause and in their need, will defend to the death their native soil, aiding each other like good comrades to the utmost of their strength. Even though large tracts of Europe and many old famous states have fallen and may fall into the grip of the Gestapo and all the odious apparatus of Nazi rule, we shall not flag or fail. We shall go on to the end. We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and the oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. And we shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills, and we shall never surrender. And if which I do not for a moment believe, this island or a large part of it were subjugated and starving, then our empire beyond the seas, armed and guarded by the British fleet, would carry on the struggle until in the time the New World, with all of its power and might, steps forth to the rescue and the liberation of the old. Winston Churchill delivered that sermon, or the speech, to the House of Commons, June 4th, 1940. And, thanks to Lend-Lease and Franklin Roosevelt and many other events, Winston Churchill proved to be a leader that stepped up to the plate when others wouldn't or couldn't. Now, I know it's easier said than done when I say never give up. I know it's a lot easier to say it than to do it. I know there are times when we just want to quit. It doesn't matter what the issue is. But I say to that, no way. The powers of darkness have a lot of grip and a lot of rope. But Unitarian Universalists are known for not giving up. And here's why. You have a faith for tough times. And that faith is alive with optimism even in the face of realism. This is an example of doing the best things in the worst of times. One more example that I came across. Do you know who composed this? Mary had a little lamb, little lamb, little lamb. I won't burden you with the pain of my voice anymore. Mary had a little lamb. The author was Sarah Josepha Hale. She's quite a woman. And she just took it upon herself. President after president after president. She would ask those presidents of the United States that we need to have a national day of Thanksgiving. And she never, ever gave up. And finally, after, so many times, so many times that she kept asking for it, it didn't even stop her that the country was in the middle of a civil war. No, she just kept at it and kept at it. And I think that in 1863, October 17th, 1863, Abraham Lincoln signed the proclamation. And I think it was just to get her off his back because he knew she'd keep coming. And, all right, now we have a National Day of Thanksgiving. He himself called for that in 1862, but he signed it in 1863, October 17th, which was before his Gettysburg Address. And the excerpt was, "It has seemed to me fit and proper that they should solemnly and reverently and gratefully acknowledge, as with one heart and one voice by the whole American people, I do therefore invite my fellow citizens in every part of the United States, those who are at sea, those who are sojourning in foreign lands, to observe the last Thursday of November as the day of Thanksgiving, prayer to our beneficent Father who dwelled in heaven, and I recommend to them, while offering up the ascriptions just duly to such a singular deliverance and blessing," etc., etc. And then he ends with, "And then fervently implore the interposition of the Almighty hand to heal the wounds of the nation and restore it as soon as may be consistent with the divine purposes, to the full enjoyment of peace and harmony, tranquility and union. A. Lincoln, 16th President of the United States, October 17th, 1863. Now, he was a politician. He didn't just issue a decree because he knew people wouldn't read it. Where did he put it? In Harper's Weekly magazine. He did. And there people read the document that made us have a national day of Thanksgiving. The story here is that Sarah Hale never gave up. And I wonder what would have happened if he delayed any more time before he would sign that thing, because I believe that she would have kept coming. Now to be honest, how do you do this? How do you handle the best things in the worst of times? For some, it may be to carry on, despite the problems that engulf you. And I know you have problems. Most of your problems are health. And I know that other people may mean to forgive others who have hurt you. Still others, it might mean to help the next generation live out their ways in loving ways rather than in judgmental ways. I just don't know precisely what doing the best things in the worst time means to you. But I do know that life will give you plenty of opportunities to practice this fine art. You don't have to go looking for it. These opportunities. Opportunity will find you. We can choose to wallow in self-pity, or we can resolve to do the best we know in the face of the worst that's happening to us. This is our time. Never, never give up. Thank you.